Hi, everyone. Sorry we're a couple of minutes late. I think a lot of people are still arriving, so thanks for your patience. But we're starting to get the critical mass, so I think, and we have a great panel with us today, so we'll probably want to start without the further ado. So I'll just kick off with a couple of introductory words before handing over to the panel. My name is Yeva Indrunite. I work with Camco, which is a climate and impact fund manager. And on behalf of Camco and RTI Power Africa, we're grateful for you to joining us today for this discussion on the importance of and the strategies for strengthening gender equity in the DRE space, with a particular focus on productive uses of electricity. The webinar is organized, as I mentioned, by Camco and RTI Power Africa in this great collaboration. And on our side, it's been supported by the REP2 Technical Assistance Facility, funded by the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. For Camco, this comes on the heels of a very big day for us yesterday. Some of you might have seen that we announced the first close of our REP2 Blended Finance Fund, which will be financing distributed renewables projects on the African continent with a strong focus on LDCs. We're very excited about it. It's something that we've been working on for a long time. And the webinar today is very important for us as well because REP2 aims to be a 2x gender lens investing aligned fund. It's a strategy that's also supported through our technical assistance facility. As part of this work, if we could move to the next slide, I wanted to draw your attention to a toolkit that was published today. It was produced by Camco's brilliant impact team and is designed to help our future REP2 investees, but also anyone working in the renewable energy space to help them design the gender action plans. It's supposed to be very user-friendly to help you guide through this process of designing and implementing a gap. It will be downloadable from our website, and we'll be posting these links after the webinar. While the toolkit will, of course, cover a very broad range of aspects related to strengthening gender equity in the renewable energy space, today we wanted to specifically focus on what, for some of you who are aware with the 2x gender lens investing criteria, would be described as Criterion 5. So it's really focusing on how to design strategies for women as customers in the DRE space. And this is an aspect that's really important for Camco. We felt that through the implementation of the REP1 fund, which was also successfully 2x aligned, this particular criterion has been quite difficult to implement. And we've always felt that it's sort of not receiving the attention that it should. So we're very excited today to have this panel with us, people who are experts and who have implemented these strategies on the ground to share some of their knowledge with us. So without further ado, over to Karen who will be the moderator of the session.
Sure. Thanks, Eva. Congrats on the first close, and the launch of the toolkit looks great. I can't wait to look at it. Thanks so much for the invitation to collaborate, and I'm really happy to moderate this discussion today. I am Karen Stefishin. I work with RTI International as a gender, climate, and climate finance advisor. And RTI is an implementing partner for the Power Africa, Empower East and Central Africa program. And I'm really happy to moderate this discussion today. And before I introduce our speakers, I just wanted to speak briefly to Power Africa's commitment to improving women's economic productivity and increasing women's income through access to affordable, productive uses of energy. For those of you joining who are not familiar with Power Africa, it's a US government-led partnership that brings together the resources of over 170 public and private sector partners like Camco to double access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa. And promoting gender equality is a key component of Power Africa. To support off-grid companies in sub-Saharan Africa to better understand the needs of female customers and ultimately improve their sales to this key market segment, Power Africa developed a roadmap for developing a market-focused gender strategy to increase women's access to productive uses of energy. This tool is available online, and it's a very useful tool guiding companies step by step to be more intentional and strategic in their approach to reaching women customers with PUE technologies. In fact, it's been tried and tested by CMU Solar, who's with us today, and Michael will speak a little bit more about it in a few moments. Power Africa also provides grant funding, and a previous grant window targeted companies in Kenya with funding to reach more women customers. All grantees were required to develop their own market-focused gender strategy. They received technical assistance from Power Africa to do so, and also to adopt good practice to implement the strategy. And I'll just add that technical assistance is available from Power Africa to companies to take the same journey. And if anybody here with us today is interested in more information, just feel free to reach out to me and I'll provide some more information about tapping into that. So I want to turn it over to our panelists now. Before I do, I just wanted to mention we will have some time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. You will see a Q&A function in the platform here. Please use that rather than the chat function. We'll be monitoring the Q&A function, and that's where we will turn to pose our questions to the panelists. And we really look forward to that. Feel free to throw them out there throughout the discussion. No need to wait for the end. So I now want to introduce our speakers. We have 3 panelists with us today, and I'm really looking forward to what I anticipate to be a very interesting discussion. Each of them has firsthand experience promoting access to PUE for women, and they have valuable insights to share with us. So we have with us Luis Marquez, and he leads Value for Women's Advisory Services Strategy and a global team of consultants, advisors, and oversees a portfolio of initiatives that provide development finance institutions, impact investors, financial institutions, and governments with advisory support in gender lens investing and cutting-edge action-oriented research. Luis leverages over 15 years of experience in the design and implementation of gender equality and women's economic empowerment projects, advisory services studies, institutional strategies, and strategic partnerships. And we are also joined by Michael Kuntz, who's the co-CEO and co-founder of Simu Solar and Tulima. He's spent the past 12 years building up social impact ventures, primarily working with smallholder farmers in Tanzania, Uganda, Nigeria, and Peru. And his prior experience was in microfinance, as well as corporate finance and insurance. And then finally, we have with us Habiba Ali. She's a clean energy entrepreneur based in Nigeria. She founded SOSI Renewable Energies companies in 2010 to empower rural women by facilitating their transition to renewable energy. Her company offers a range of renewable energy products, including solar lamps, water purifiers, solar panels, and energy consulting services. And she aims to bring clean, renewable energy solutions to Nigeria's budding communities, particularly rural women. So thanks very much to all the panelists for taking the time to be with us today. I'll now get the discussion started. I'll start with you, Luis. And I would just like you to speak to us, please, about why investors and businesses should consider a gender-inclusive approach to productive uses of energy, given that these products benefit everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. And thank you for having me here. And so first, hello to everybody from Mozambique. Yeah, let me quickly tell you who Value for Women is first for those that don't know us. We're a social enterprise and foundation that unleashes the power of the private sector to create more opportunities for women. So we work with companies just like yourselves, with investors and private equity and venture capital towards serving more women and serving women better. And we've worked with thousands of organizations. So that's where I'm coming from today. And the reason we do it is because it's a smart thing to do and the right thing to do. And so on the investment side, when we talk about why is this, why should investors do this, we have ample data from the last decade from emerging markets that shows that investors that invest in gender equality, gender diversity, gender diverse companies get better investment outcomes. So for example, just one data point from dozens of studies that are out there, the International Finance Corporation looked at hundreds of emerging market funds, including Africa, Asia, etc. And they saw that performance of funds with gender balanced teams was 13% higher than those funds that didn't have a balance, right? That didn't have a balance of women and men on their teams. On the business side, tackling gender inclusion may seem like a daunting task for a clean tech company. So let's look at some examples. So let's take an example from Africa. And given the different systemic barriers that women have in African and emerging markets, they have less access or ability to benefit from clean technologies. They have why? Because they have less income, information, and assets to be able to get benefit and get clean tech and other solutions. So how does this what does this look like for a clean tech company in practice? And again, to answer the question of why should companies think about this? A few years back, we worked with a pay-go solar company in Kenya. And the company conducts customer education for every product that they sell, right, as part of their sales project. And they found that 32% of customer service calls, they were dealing with questions that should be covered during that purchase, the education process when they do their sales. So the call center was spending a lot of time and money, right, on this follow-up education. So some quick qualitative research and success aggregated data analysis found that 41% of purchasers were the end user, and 83% of end users were women. So basically, men were buying a lot of the products, but they weren't the users. So the information was going to men, but not getting to women. So what the company did, something simple, right? They adapted their scripts and their process to explicitly include end users, right, which were women. Something relatively simple. Within, I think, either 3 or 6 months, they reduced those calls by 1/3, and they saved something like $200,000 to $300,000 within the first few months, right? Which is significant for the company. And so you can see how gender dynamics can play out and lead to uneven outcomes, right? That make it so that women might not be accessing the right information, getting the products, but also companies might not be getting the best outcomes as well.
Thanks, Louis. That's a super interesting example. So we're hearing there's a strong business case that's pushing a gender inclusive approach, and also that it's important because women may face unique barriers, in fact, to accessing these technologies. So thanks for sharing that. Michael, I'd now like to hear from you. Recently, CMU Solar collaborated with Power Africa to develop an evidence-based market-focused gender strategy. Can you tell us a little bit about the methodology for developing this strategy and some of the key insights that CMU Solar gleaned from the exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe as pretext, CMU Solar had, we were founded with a mission to be as inclusive as possible. Our co-founders were a gender diverse team. Marianne, my co-founder, is also others were majority owned by women. It's in our DNA, and we believe that there was a market opportunity there, as well as doing the right thing, as Louis said. We had worked with Power Africa already to kind of self-assess and do what we could, but and there's a lot of tools out there and a lot you can do on your own. So I encourage anyone who's looking at this to really embrace what's available, and even an hour of pro bono advice can lead you a long way. But still, there's a lot in terms of internally really seeing what are some of the actions we can take from a market perspective. We needed a bit more help, and that's where Power Africa's support came in and was really transformational. So we started off, the methodology was, we said, let's get the perspectives on what we're trying to achieve. What are the best practices, what's known, what's been done already, not to reinvent the wheel. And that involves some review of research, but also interviews of some of our team, understanding a bit of our mission and culture in order to start forming some hypotheses and things to look into. Then, being data driven, they went out and they engaged with all the different stakeholders, staff in different departments, clients, partners, really trying to understand the landscape and what was going on. And that was really, we had not been able to ourselves undertake that because there's a certain kind of specialty you need to be able to go out there and do that kind of engagement and research. And from that, they were able to do some analysis. And what's interesting also is it wasn't a broad-based, how inclusive are you? How are your products serving a diverse audience? It really went down by function. So sales, how are you approaching sales with respect to potential women clients? How are you approaching aftermarket service? The example that Luis gave is great, and I'll come back to that. Credit, a big one, financial inclusion, and product development, and just think of all the different areas within the business. So they really looked at it by function, and that was extremely helpful as we went into the next phase, which was a co-creation phase with our team. And that was really unexpected and great because the team got engaged in coming up with what they saw as potential solutions, things we could adopt that would make a difference there. And that led to a very KPI-based action plan, our gender action plan, which has milestones, has dates, and has a sort of a prioritization in it of where we can get the most, given that we're a small company, we have limited resources, we really have to focus. And because the team was part of building it, they were really bought in. So that was, I'd say, the whole of the methodology.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Michael. Really interesting. I think what we're hearing is the importance of evidence gathering and analysis even before undertaking the strategy, so that it's really well informed, and also interesting to hear how important the engagement of the entire team was in that process, rather than sort of just delegating it or outsourcing it. So congratulations on that. Yeah, Habiba, I'd love to hear from you now. Can you please tell us about the tool and app that SOSI developed to support women to start and grow businesses using PUE technologies?
Okay, thank you, Karen. Good afternoon, everyone. So I want to talk about the tool, the market map, that we developed to help support the improvement of women's access to microfinance for agricultural businesses, which is like, for their to access. It is a tool that is developed to help improve women's opportunities to access microfinance for solar-powered agro-processing equipment. It came off of the need for this design came because over 60% of produce harvested is going to waste for farmers in the communities, because Nigeria is majorly agrarian, especially the north where we work, and 60% of produce is lost to inaccessibility to agro-processing facilities. And this also where you have some of them, they are actually fossil fuel powered, and there's a lack of knowledge as to the spread of existing agro-processing solutions, of those ones that are not even efficient, as we would like to call them, quote unquote. And then women in most of these communities mainly process produce with their hands. They thresh maize with their hands, they dry with their hands, and then they go through irrigation, with the fossil fuel powered solutions. And so one of the things that we wanted to achieve was to provide a potential number of customers for the women in a certain region the opportunity to have a PUE that is solar powered, so that they can reduce their agricultural losses. So, for example, in communities where tomatoes are farmed, they do not have to then tell them, lose tomato, because due to non-drying possibilities, they had actually lost tomatoes before. So now they have a dryer in the community, and they can bring it to the women to actually have it dried for a fee. We also wanted to increase the confidence of the entrepreneurs in their own business model. So we supported them to develop business models, and we plugged that into the tool as well. We also wanted the microfinance institutions to be sure of what they were doing with the women, if they were entering into a business activity that was actually profitable. So we also did run a pilot alongside. So after the tool was developed, there was a pilot with about 40 women, and the tool actually houses all of the business model. It also houses the information the women plug into their app. So there's a tool that's web-based, and there's an app. So the women plug in their sales, how many people they found, let's say, drive for in a day, how much access they have, where they are based, and all of that. So all that information is plugged in. And then we're able to get the microfinance institutions to look at that. And in other communities or other areas outside of the pilot area where we've had women that wanted to own productive use of energy solutions, we were able to tell the microfinance banks that these people have already done a financial model, business model, and they could look at it and see if they were good enough to be funded. And I think we were able to fund about 5 women through this tool so far.
Thanks, Abiba. That's super interesting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think what that highlights is we often think about how to market and sell to women, and you're telling us how important it is to think about what else women might need actually to generate income from their productive use technologies. So recognizing that they can access and buy, but they still need other support, such as business model development support, business training, access to finance, and sounds like you're providing a really holistic package and really meeting a gap there.
Yeah, and then, being able to do it digitally has actually been the game changer, because we do not have to be everywhere training the women. Some of the modules are on the tool and the women can actually go and access it themselves.
Yeah, super interesting. If anybody wants to learn a bit more about the app and the tool, can they reach out to you? Is that fine?
Sorry, that's very fine. I mean, please feel free to reach out to me. It's for time purposes. I would have even showed it online now.
Okay, no, great, because I imagine there will be some more interest in understanding how that app was developed and how it works. Thanks a lot. Back to you, Lewis. Can you please tell us about some good practices that you see from companies? I mean, you shared one already about the modification in the call center approach and the script. Do you have some other good practices to share with us from companies specifically to increase uptake of PUE by women? And maybe you can also speak to some of the challenges you see companies facing.
Yes.
Thanks.
I'll try to do all that in the 3 minutes, but I think what's good is that we recently spent a lot of time thinking about this, right? About what works. And so we partnered with Acumen, which is a very well-known impact investors in Africa and specifically, but in emerging markets in general. And we just released a month ago, and I'll share it in the chat in a moment, a report on gender smart business action, right? So we looked at 100+ case studies from Value for Women's work, our work with Acumen's portfolio, and on other partners such as yourselves. And we looked at specifically early stage companies and SMEs. I'd say a majority in the agriculture and clean tech sectors. And we developed a series of pathways that refers to a set of actions to help improve opportunities and outcomes for women, while at the same time achieving business results like the ones I mentioned before. And so 3 things that came out is that, but by the way, these case studies are success stories, right? There's probably a lot of other stories that didn't make it, but what we found was that it was really important. So three things that came out. One is that prioritizing gender actions that are budget conscious but impactful is really important, right? So if you're a growing business, right, in a startup, you have very limited budgets. And so when you're thinking about gender, it needs to be something that's accessible, right? At least to start. And so the second, thing we found is that this, the success stories had easy and quick wins, right? They were able to identify something they could do in a short time frame to get buy-in from internal stakeholders. Because one of the challenges to what you're mentioning a lot of times is these gender biases that we have ingrained in our societies, right? That, why should we be discriminating against men, or why should we, aren't men and women equal? Why should we be thinking about them differently? But the truth is that men and women have differentiated needs. So doing some quick wins where you're able to show the results, right, and the needs quickly is important. And then the third thing we saw is a lot of flexibility and ready to pivot, right? Like with the goal of, for example, better serving women, right, or more women, but staying flexible in what you do. So quick example of how this panned out with a company with Husk Power, which is a solar mini grid developer and net zero energy provider in Africa and Asia. And anyway, among many things that we looked at with them is we found that they had only 2% of their India customers, right, were women-led businesses, right, which then were also reaching out to women to sell products. So they have this agent model with, where having more women entrepreneurs is pivotal to reach more women, particularly in rural and conservative societies. And if you only have 2% women, that's also going to be really hard. So, but they didn't really have a clear understanding of women-led business needs. So what did they do, or what did we do with them? You know, very similar to what Michael was saying, right? You reach out to women to hear from them and understand their needs. You launch a targeted marketing campaign, and you communicate that you want to hear from them, and that you're also want more women customers, and you establish a strategy with targets with direct outreach to women. So basically, common sense product development, but targeted at women, right? So the biggest challenge is overcoming the biases, or the fact that there might be a need to have a differentiated strategy for women. Within 1 year, with this strategy that seems pretty simple, right? Hus went from 2% women customers to 8% women-led business customers. 96% of women customers noted increased, sales and business outcomes. So another thing we found there was those three kind of like trends, and then three factors of success that we found in this type of example is that the C-suite leadership is critical for overcoming internal biases, right, and establishing accountability, so that gender can be seen as a priority. And I think linked to that is that gender should be part of a core business KPI, right, or business goal, and not seen as CSR, right, for it to really stick within the company and to become a way of thinking within the company. Also, you need more than one gender champion in the organization. You need a few people, right? Otherwise, so there's always normally a woman that's tasked with everything that has to do with this issue, and then the initiatives can die because that person is overworked, and normally this is like, not part of their 9-to-5 job or whatever. And finally, data. There's a lot of customer data that's not being used. We're surprised. A lot of these tech-heavy and data-heavy companies are not accessing their data, or they're collecting it but not analyzing it. And if they're analyzing it, they're not using it. So the companies that did well went through those loops, and then they also created those feedback loops with women, right? What are specifically what are women telling us? And so that's so we have a bunch of success stories that I'll share in the chat with more of that. Thank you, Karen.
Great, thanks, Louis. That sounds like a great guide that you developed with Acumen. So I'm sure many will go search for it. Before I move back to Michael, I just wanted to invite Michael or Habiba to share any reflections or elaborations on any of Louis's input there. Does it resonate, or no pressure, just an invitation if there's something you wanted to jump in with at this moment?
Habiba, would you like to?
No, not me, Michael. You can go.
Okay, I'll just say that
I think it's a good report, and it will be useful to us. Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I find that what Louis said, definitely we face that we do have multiple champions, and that's really critical. So it doesn't just seem like one person's initiative, but really framing that it's core to your strategy. And the resource constraints are real, right? These kinds of investments, though they do make good business sense, they take time for you to really see the results of that. And many of these businesses like us, it's you're working on goals this month, next month, you're focused on your cash flow. It's really, you don't often have the luxury of making these really big long-term bets. So you have to prioritize, maybe is a better way to put it, and see if you can layer it into things you're already doing without overwhelming your team with all these different things they have to be thinking about. So that to me is the biggest challenge in being able to implement it: financial and then people's bandwidth resources as you go about prioritizing.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, very real challenges that that we see as well in the market. Thanks for sharing that. And no need to mute yourself, because I have another question for you, Michael. Louis already spoke a little bit about the business case for a gender inclusive approach to productive uses of energy. I'd love to hear from you. Why do you think it makes commercial sense from your perspective as a business co-founder and co-CEO?
Yeah, so we had done our own research in advance on our market are primarily farmers. Solar water pumping is the main product we have. We have some other productive use assets, but that's the one that's really scaled the most. And 50% of farmers are women. And in this project, Power Africa engaged ECO, a climate finance expert, to do the work and engagement. And they surfaced similar research showing that there is this real market, but that 95% of businesses out there do not see them as a market, or at least have not differentiated them, as sort of what Luis was saying, that it's kind of one market, and one set of needs, and it's a blind spot. And we had a sense for that, but we hadn't yet done the research in that. So that the research bore it out. And it's interesting, one of the things we saw was that women are as involved in the farming process as men, and many times it's a household business. But they're involved at different phases. So oftentimes in a dual household, the man goes out and makes the decision on what they're going to buy, and they go out and they buy the seeds, they make investments in the capital equipment like pumps, and then during the cycle of farming, oftentimes the women are very involved in the irrigation and cultivation. When it comes to harvest and selling, oftentimes then the men again are involved in that process of going out and selling it. But now it's more complex than that, because you also have sometimes farming that women have areas that they have on their crops that maybe they can eat or harvest more quickly to ensure the household financial needs are met. Whereas oftentimes you'll see that the man is invested in like a cash crop, a big harvest, big money that then you can use maybe for your school fees or larger investments and expenses. And so there's also that, and there are different needs for that. The scale of the equipment you need, portability is another factor that's very different. So these are the kinds of considerations that are not in the market. Then you get into financing, and we found that women often did not view themselves as bankable. And some of this was based on actual history of land rights and such, and having the title. Some of it was just completely folklore. They had this in their mind, but in reality they could go to a bank and did have all of the qualifications needed. So a lot of the language became important too. There were many more of these insights, but we saw that the reason there wasn't in the market more adoption was often that these insights had not yet been surfaced by other businesses, because they were viewing it in a very homogenous way. And once ECO and Power Africa helped us surface those insights, we could see what we believed, that there is this other market. It takes a disaggregated approach. You can't have the same approach for both. But if you take that, then you can increase the adoption rate among women farmers and other women productive use users.
Thanks, Michael. Really interesting insights. Thanks for sharing those. Yeah, and Habiba, I have another question for you. Why do you think it's important to be intentional and strategic in order to increase access to PUE by women in rural communities? And a second part of that question is, what support do you think is needed in the sector to encourage more companies to roll out PUE activities that target women?
Okay, so for one thing that I've known, working in rural communities in northern Nigeria, is that most of the processing activities for farming, like I said earlier, most of the communities are actually agrarian in nature, they farm. And one of the things you find is a number of them are actually processing with, what I would call quote unquote crude methods. For example, meal shelling is done by hand. You mill. There are some of the produce that you have to, mill by hand, and you pound when you're trying to shell, dehusk. You pound in a mortar until you get it to be dehusked. So, and all of these activities are done mostly by women. The men go to the farm and bring it to the house. But for it to be turned into processed produce, then the women are the ones that take over. And with time, even though they get used to it, it's actually very time consuming. Even if it is just for the household, it's not, the hard work alone is not enough. So they've had a practice in the north what we call Gaya, which means if one person's farm is being, say, somebody harvests and wants to dehusk their maize, everybody goes to that person's house and then helps to do it, and then the next person like that. So you can never do one thing alone. So for me, it's a no-brainer to introduce productive use of energy solutions and allow the women to be the ones using it, because after all, this is what they were doing, and they can actually make some income off of it. I mean, I come from northern Nigeria, where Islam is still predominant, and you find some homes where the man is married to 2 wives or 3 wives or 4 wives, and so women do 4 or 5 women, 3 or 4 women are married to one man, and there's no way the income of that man is going to ever be enough for the whole family, where they have maybe each even has like 7 children. Yeah, so her having some sort of income is good for her to also, add her own quota to ensuring the family is being brought up well, children can go to school. And I've seen a situation where when children go to school, and due to the religion as well, there's a huge respect for the mother. The mother can actually decide, because we had a huge problem with insurgency in the north for some time, the woman can tell the boy, if I see you doing this, then you're in trouble. And the boy or child is looking at the value of the mother in his life. Of course, they won't. And then coupled with religion, they would also be very careful. The second part of your question, I'm beginning to forget.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm also wondering if you can just speak to what support is needed in the sector to encourage more companies. I heard you say it's a no-brainer, to be intentional about targeting women, and one would think it's a no-brainer, but when one engages with many companies, and Michael also alluded to this, that it's really not obvious, the importance of segmentation of the market. So what support do you think could be provided to encourage more companies to take this approach?
Well, I think that if you look at the productive use of energy solutions, especially the solar powered ones, I would say they are not cheap, right? Even if they are not solar powered, a source of energy is required for them to work. And if you as a company wants to sell it, you need to have enough capital, because these people you are selling to will not be able to pay off at one time. There's always a need to infuse a pay-as-you-go option to the payment support. So it would be really nice if companies can be encouraged to go into the sector by putting up. I mean, a lot are going on now, but most of them are like results-based. And result-based financing, as much as it means well, is also, I like to say, troublesome financing, because then you have to seek for financing to do the project. Before then you're now paid off, then you now pay whoever advanced you finance. So an advanced finance would be very good to support that kind of business. So people can plug in these solutions, and as the people pay, you actually taking care of the repayments as against looking for money to do the work and all of that.
That's a really important point, Habiba. What I'm hearing is that in some instances, or is it what I'm hearing, there may be a disconnect between investor priorities and approaches and company needs and the reality of the business.
That's exactly it. So, investors have their own, I totally agree that it's a business that the investors are also running as well. And just like we want to do well, they also want to do well. But in the long run, there's a need for the financing to be patient. There's a need for the financing to be available at the time that it is needed.
Thanks. No, thanks. Super important point. Michael, I'll just ask you if you want to jump in on the support question, because you did also say it's challenging. You have intentions, and then implementation is challenging in terms of resources and what's needed. Maybe if you can just speak super quickly to what you think could be helpful in terms of support from the sector.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first step I do encourage is that any company, or if you are a TA provider or you're a grant program, whatever, is to try to identify and utilize the resources that are freely available, because it starts the learning process and starts you knowing what you might need, even if it's hypotheses at the early stages. So We use the tool from the International Center for Research on Women, ICRW. They have a nice little tool, self-assessment, but it starts you thinking about here are the different buckets of a gender strategy and helps you start to get self-aware. So do what you can. Like the advice I have is that first step's important. And if you're advising companies, give them the tools, encourage them, help them take the first step. And, you know, Karen of Power Africa, you were very helpful for us in taking those first steps. You know, we had the interest, we didn't have the know-how. But then there's nothing more valuable than on the ground TA, having an expert that knows how to engage, has the sensitivity and awareness to engage with the various stakeholders, be they clients, be they women's lending groups, be they your own staff, and really have illuminating conversations about it. And then that facilitating ability to work with your team and help you kind of build a plan together. So I'd say if you can get that, if you're a sponsor, if you can sponsor it, if you're a company, you know, just wave the sign saying, we need this help. And it may take a year, it may take 2 years until one of your programs or funders or someone says they're willing to, because it's expensive. I mean, companies like us, we can't afford to just on our own budget do this typically. But if you let the world know that you want this and you show them the work you've already done, it makes it more possible that you'll get that on the ground TA, which I think is that really that what takes you from kind of a theoretical plan to something that's got some momentum, that's data driven, and specific targets so that you can then go implement.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, super helpful. Yeah, I've also seen how on the ground TA can be a real game changer in moving the needle. Yeah, I can attest to that. Habiba and Lewis, I'll also just invite you, give you an opportunity to share any advice you might have in a minute or two with companies who might like to better understand and reach women with PUE in their markets. What advice would you give them? Maybe I'll start with Lewis. We haven't heard from him in a few minutes.
Yeah, so I think the advice, Michael took it from me. I think we normally have value for women. Michael said exactly what you said, which is get started. And that's, we talk about having a lot of accessible entry points. So if you're a company, it's get started. If it's feeling like overwhelming, etc., start small, quick wins, we mentioned. And then, yeah, then there's a lot of support out there. And to that end, I'll also just make a quick plug that we are launching. We think it's important to recognize, to your previous question, it's really important to recognize companies and provide incentives for companies. So there's more and more financial incentives from different investors and even like lenders and financial institutions for companies that are either led by women or are including gender lens into their business models. But there's also soft incentives. So we are launching. I'll also post an inclusive action hub, and there will be a challenge with a $5,000 reward coming out for companies just like all of you. So I'll share that. So yeah, and getting started. Oh yeah, and the data I mentioned as a starting point as well is look at the data you have. Where are the women, and like what are women telling you? Again, it doesn't have to be a market research that costs $500,000. You could probably go out, do a couple of focus groups, look at your own data, and that's how you can get started.
Great, thanks for that, Lewis. Super helpful. Habiba?
Yeah. Okay, so for me, I would say that I mean, as we all know, gender inclusivity can increase a company's market reach. It will also improve the sustainability and enhance their financial capacity and performance generally. There's this thing that people always think women are not really, active in agriculture as should be, but the truth is a lot of women are active in agriculture, and with access to PUE and financing to make this technology more affordable, then we can create more local entrepreneurs of the women who are in these communities, ensure that they have micro enterprises, and there will be a lot of generation of local jobs as well for the people in the communities. So development will, of course, definitely come as a result of all of this. So having the right kind of productive use of energy support can enhance profitability for women. It can ensure that they also have there's a good service delivery to the farmers who are coming to them for agro-processing activities. And so, yeah, for me, it also makes a lot more sense if it is solar powered.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that great advice. I trust that many in this webinar are inspired. At least we hope. So thanks for that. I now want to turn to some questions. We have a few in the Q&A, but there's still time for you to add your questions. So if you do have any, I encourage you to type them into the Q&A, and hopefully we will be able to get all of them, but you could type just as we are moving along. I'll start with one interesting question here. Somebody is asking if discounts on products are a good way to reach women customers. Any thoughts on that? And feel free. Okay, please start, Habiba. Yep, feel free.
I think when we say discount, I mean, for how long can the discount last? You know, a product it is what the price is for the seller, because I mean, you as a seller would have done your unit economics and know this is at this point that if I sell it, it makes sense, right? So if I now have to discount it, it means I'm actually also, you know, doing myself a disfavor. And truth be told, these solutions are still solutions that have not really gained as much acceptance, to the point that probably due to scale, you could make your discount money back. So it's still a very dicey situation. As I would advise that it will be better if we can have structured payments and let people pay as you go, lease to own, you know, but at full cost until when the market is fully infused with this kind of technologies, then we can start thinking of maybe collective discounts or, you know. But, you know, if companies are also getting result-based financing, then yes to discounts as well. If the result-based finance comes to the companies, not the women.
That makes a lot of sense, Habiba. Michael, any reflections on that?
I really like the results-based financing after the fact, as opposed to a market-facing sort of demand-driven discount. One of the things we've seen is gaming whenever there is any kind of incentive that might, or perception that a woman applicant will be better, have a higher likelihood of approval for credit than a male applicant. So we've had people, women apply, and then we found out that it was maybe the sister of someone who was actually the buyer, and maybe he already had some credit issues and was kind of putting her in front to apply on his behalf. Or I guess the risk is always with any kind of market distortion incentive is that people figure out how to game it. And so I like the idea of more behind the scenes and incentives. So the company says, this makes financial sense for me to invest more resources, more marketing, more effort because of this RBF, but you're not putting it out there in the market and starting to create, there's a lot of also complexities in communities you're selling to, and the dynamics and the perception they have of like, why are you giving a better deal to them than to us? And so that can actually create some tension that is counterproductive and has secondary impacts that could be harmful. So yeah, I side with that.
Yeah, great point. Sounds like there's some real risks with discounts, and it has to be done very, very carefully. Yeah, thanks for that. I have another question here, and just feel free to unmute yourself if you wish to respond. Somebody's wondering if there are funding sources or programs currently in the market which could support experimentation, product development in this area.
I'm not aware of gender-focused R&D pools of funding. There are innovation grants that come out from organizations like Efficiency for Access, I think Innovate UK, and others, which are R&D and innovation focused. I'm sure that they are, and they always ask the questions. Everyone always asks the gender-related questions. Is that the reason they'll ultimately approve the funding? I don't really know how it weighs, how they weight it, but I'm not aware of gender-specific innovation grants, unless maybe a specific investor, say an Acumen Foundation side, might be interested in that, or if you find that, but not a broad program that I'm aware of.
Mm. Lewis, I wonder if you have anything to add to that. Oh,
Okay.
Habiba, sorry, you unmuted yourself, and then we could, please go ahead, Habiba.
Okay. So I was thinking about I agree with Michael. There's actually none that's specific to women or gender, gender biased, quote unquote. But there are the Prio one, it's powering renewable energy, something pure, PURE, and then there's one that is Nigerian, which is from the AFDB. It's called AFDB PUE window, something like that. And but these are all to actually encourage adoption of the PUEs, and especially for the AFDB one, it's actually geared towards communities where they have mini grids. This is also to encourage more customers for the mini grid supplier as well. Yeah. But the PREO one is just gold standard.
Okay, thanks for sharing those examples. Lewis, did you have anything to add?
No, just that I don't know if they have a new, but the Energy Catalyst Accelerator Program of UKRI, that I think Michael might have been referencing, or one of those. They don't have specific gender innovation, right? But they do have a gender, like they want gender and social inclusion impact. So I think that's what there's a lot of, right? Within all the funding and innovation funding and grant funding, technical assistance support that there is in the space, there's normally either a feature, like they're also looking for impact on women, basically, right? On gender equality. And so I think that if you're looking for that, that's always a plus that helps with the funding. There's some windows that are specific for gender, but nothing I can mention that's out right now that's specific. Yeah.
Great, thanks. I see another question here. Habiba, I think I'd like to start with you. If we talk about PUE in the mini grid space, because I do know Sosai is also a mini grid developer as well. Who is best placed to design and run PUE programs? Do mini grid developers have the expertise? Should it be outsourced? If so, does the ecosystem exist to support them? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, because the mini grid is already a very capital intensive project as is, and then you have this grid where you are generating an electricity and selling to the people in the community. That's already a lot of work on its own. So you'll find that a lot of mini grid developers do not want to be the ones also, bringing in the PUEs and selling it and monitoring. And most of these PUEs come in and are sold to the owners as pay as you go or lease to own. So you want to also have that level of monitoring them and all of that. But what we've done in one of our mini grids recently is we bought the motors to change some of the milling machines. And we added that. So for the people who bought the motors, we added that cost to their electricity cost. So when they buy electricity, it's in there embedded. So we are not stressed about, and because we've already managed it digitally, it makes it easy. We're not stressed about running around and catching them to pay and all of that. But as they buy electricity, they are also, in essence, paying for the PUE.
That's a great example. Thanks. Lewis or Michael, any thoughts on that question? Okay. Great. Well, that is all of the questions in our Q&A. I think what I will do is just put our panelists on the spot and give you 30 seconds, 1 minute for just any final reflections, anything that is burning and you want to share. Let's start with Lewis.
Just to say that we've worked with some of the biggest clean tech companies in Africa, and startups that are at the idea stage, right? And there's a place to start for everybody on this front. And again, we're just trying. I think organizations like us Power Africa. We're trying to make it accessible. There's a lot of resources that Michael was on. There's resources and actual support. I'm seeing that you're offering free support. We don't have free support, but we have the Inclusive Action Hub. So just get started. There's a lot of support out there, and it could really help you with fundraising if that's what you're looking for. It could help your business. So really, there's you know, like there's I guess little excuse not to get started. And if you're already started, I think there's a good incentives to go deeper. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Michael, last words?
Just to repeat it, just get started. I think that's a good theme if you're an operator and if you're a funder of any kind in the space. Put together programs, allocate capital, identify consultants like Value for Women and ECO and others who can, you know, do the work, and have a meet companies where they're at in their stage, so that, you know, it's not a one size fits all kind of support you provide, because companies, it's important work, there's great opportunities, but it is a patient capital, longer term kind of investment. So we do need help in achieving that.
Thanks for those great closing thoughts. And Habiba?
Okay, so for me, I would say that it is good to have more and more support for women who want to own productive use of energy solutions in the community, because this could actually be one of the key solutions to bringing about the need for equality, especially in rural Nigeria. And this will help also to shift mentalities in regions where women are underrepresented. It will help. It could be a reason why we could move the needle from children who get pushed into insurgency back to aligning their ways, because their mothers could actually create a great influence in their lives. So more and more financing can be channeled towards that, and supporting them with technical assistance as well.
Great closing thoughts. Thanks. And that brings us right to time. I want to thank the panelists so much for joining us today, taking the time, sharing that really interesting, valuable input and insight. And we really wish you the best moving forward with your businesses. Yes, thank you. Also, just to say that we will circulate a recording of the webinar along with the links to the tools that we mentioned. And we really wish all companies here on the line with us the best in developing their own strategies to increase their reach to women customers. That's all from my side. Thanks again to Camco for the collaboration. Yeva, just invite you to put on your camera, wondering if you have any last words, and then we will close.
No, I think you've summed it up very well. Thanks, Karen.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.